now we will have Ted Gruetzner from OPG give us an update with respect to Darlington.
Thanks, Colleen. And I don't have a presentation because I'm notoriously bad at speaking to slides, so if you're expecting great visuals, you'll go away disappointed today. I wanted to thank you for coming today. This is a fascinating topic, and I can say that because my background, and I won't bore you with all the details, was in the old Ontario Hydro / OPG company, and also working at the independent system operators. So while the system operator, we went through the blackout of 2002, three, and have experienced things like the ice storm in the late 90s, major tornadoes through Ontario in the mid-90s that had thousands, hundreds of thousands of people without power for days and weeks on end. So resiliency is something I've experienced firsthand. I've got to go to communities where trying to explain to them why they don't have power for and aren't expected to have power for days on end. It's not not a thing you would like to do. It's heart-wrenching. It hurts your soul because you're supposed to be providing them with power. So something I've seen, and so it's something that's a really fascinating topic, and it also forced me to really think about some of the aspects of what we do, particularly on refurbishment, and where that plays into resiliency. And as I thought it through, there was actually more connections than I would have thought. It's also good to see some familiar faces like John Flores, who I used to bug regularly with phone calls about Nuclear Liability Act questions and things, so it's nice to see him today. So a little bit on OPG 101, and I won't bore you with a lot of the details, but for those of you who don't know, we provide about half the power in Ontario. We run 2 nuclear plants, Pickering, Darlington. We have 66 hydroelectric plants. It's the part of our business that you probably are the least familiar with, and it's a fairly important part of what we do. It also is, oddly enough, in recent years, as we go through what we're seeing firsthand on climate change, probably the one that's affected most by different climate patterns. We also have, in 2014, stopped our burning coal in Ontario, and just yesterday blew up the smokestacks at our Nanticoke plant, which was at one point the largest coal-fired operation in the world, and it's now being repurposed as a 44-megawatt solar facility that's a partnership with the Six Nations community up the road. We also have 3 First Nations partners on hydroelectric projects, a large one with the Moose Cree First Nation, and 2 smaller ones with Lac Seul and the Tawa-Tegwana First Nation on the Abitibi River. So that's a little bit about us. So today, Darlington and how it fits resiliency. So we're not going to declare victory yet. We have a long way to go on Darlington, but we're about halfway through the work that we started back in a year and a half ago, and we remain on time and on budget, and we have high confidence that will stay that way. And I want to repeat that because it's not something that you hear too often with nuclear projects. We're on time and we're on budget, and I'll get into some of the reasons for that because it touches on some things that you may find interesting, and I know Richard's going to talk a bit about that as well. So we're currently nearing the end of what we call the dismantling phase. There's 5 phases in this project. Once we're done that, we're going to start to put everything back together again. Right now, we've close to taking out things like the pressure tubes, the calandria operations, end fittings, all of that thing, safely stored on site. Some of it's being removed to our waste facility, and which is nestled in like sort of a OPG version of Liechtenstein or Andorra within the heart of the Bruce Power operations. And we're running parallel work on key components for the conventional side, such as the turbine rebuilding, which one of the lessons that we learned is often if you focus too much on the reactor side and forget the conventional side, you're playing catch up at the end, and we want everything to come to the finish line together. So we hope to start putting back together again this summer. The turbine is almost complete in terms of the work, so a lot of that a lot of things are going well. And this is not a fluke. OPG has had great project success on our 2 most recent hydro projects. The Peter Sutherland project was a small project, but up north, a lot of complicated engineering. It's on time and on budget, was delivered onto service last summer. Larger project, a 454 megawatt station on the Moose River, again, on time and on budget. This is done through learning the lessons from mistakes that we've made, companies like Bruce Power have made, collaborating on lessons learned on how we're going to do these projects better. Pre-engineering, making sure that you've got all your supply chain lined up. And so we are also looking at the Embalse reactor refurbishment, which doesn't get mentioned up here, but it's in Argentina, and it's also on track and on budget, using some of the collaborative processes that the industry has put together. And as Richard will talk about a little bit too, a key element is this industry and collaboration. In our case, it's particularly with Bruce Power. The industry has always cooperated on a lot of levels, operationally, safety, through organizations like the Can-Do Owners Group, WANO, for example. But the two new presidents of our respective companies, Jeff Lyash and Mike Renchak, have a long history of working together. And one of the first things that they did was say to both companies, whatever differences we have, stop. We're working together. Because our success and failure will depend on each other. And we've relied very heavily on this cooperation with Bruce Power on supply chain, employment practices, engineering practices, learning lessons learned from our respective projects. We're passing what we're learning on to Bruce Power for their project. We've got staff embedded in each operation, so there's a level of cooperation and collaboration in this industry that I've not seen in my close to 30 years of doing this, and it's good for the industry, it's good for the companies, and more importantly, it's good for the public in terms of safety and delivering projects when we say we'll get them undone. So the refurb itself, just in case you don't know, is a $12.8 billion project. We like to call it Canada's clean energy project. That's until Bruce Power takes over, and will be the next one, the next biggest. And it's got a huge impact on the province, and this plays a big part, I think, in some of the resiliency that we're talking about, because you can't have a stable economy or a stable civilization without a stable economy. And in addition to delivering 30-plus years of clean energy, we're adding a huge amount to the province. 96% of the spend of this $12.8 billion project is going to be spent in Ontario. That's because Ontario has the luxury of a really high quality and vast supply chain to supply the nuclear industry. Our Conference Board of Canada report said that the project and continued operation of Darlington will boost the economy by about $90 billion. That's $90 billion over the life of the plant. And we currently have about 3,000 workers on site. And another aspect in terms of resiliency, because we all know there's a shortage of trade workers coming up. Bruce Power is going to be needing a lot of people. There's a huge amount of infrastructure being spent. What our arrangement with SNC and AECON, our two major contractors, is that 20% of the trades workers will be apprentices, and we're particularly focusing on First Nations. Right now, the last I heard, it was about 13 or 14%. We're a little bit below, but we're trying to make sure that there's a pipeline of skilled workers, both for our projects, their project, and for the economy as a better. And this adds to another resiliency aspect of the benefits of the project. At the same time, there's about 200 suppliers around the province who supply either on a continual basis or specifically to this project on the nuclear supply chain. They make everything from end fittings, they make large pipes, small components, platforms. Companies like Brotec and Barrie, or Promation out in Mississauga, Oakville, Burlington area. And their quality standards, the expectation of delivery for our projects has allowed them to bid and be successful on aerospace projects. There's a company called Triumph Gear up in North Toronto. They had to retool all of their operation to make sure that they could meet the quality expectations of both us and Bruce Power. In doing so, they were now starting to get contracts with Boeing and Bell Helicopter. This allowed these companies to hire sometimes only 10 or 20 workers, sometimes only 5 workers. But in those particular communities, it means well-paying jobs that will be stable for at least 10 to 15, 20 years. And in the case of Brotec, it was interesting. I was doing a walk around up there a few months ago, and it turned out the quality of their systems and their machining were the only ones who could meet Tesla's expectations for a certain component that they needed for their cars. So it's kind of an interesting and really sort of gratifying thing to sort of walk around and see these projects in place and say, hey, we're part of this. We're building communities around the province. And the success of the Darlington project was recently rewarded, and some of you may know this, and recognized by the Ontario government. In the long-term energy plan, there were what they called off-ramps. If we hadn't met the expectations of what we were supposed to deliver, they had the option to say, that's it, we're not going to go forward. About 2 weeks ago, the Minister of Energy was supposed to come, but he got stuck in Sudbury because of poor planning on his part. He was going to fly in the same day and got stuck in a fog bank, but announced that they were going to give us the green light to go ahead with Unit 3 on the project. And this wouldn't have happened if we hadn't have done the work that we're supposed to have done on Unit 2. So great success for the industry. I think it's a great news for the province, great news for our colleagues at Bruce Power that there's that confidence in the project that we're going to go forward. On a quick operational aspect, OPG's had a very good year in the last year. Both of our plants had the highest safety rating from the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. And Pickering is enjoying its best operational performance in this year. The commitment of the station and the station management and the station workers is that the last day at Pickering in 2024 will be the best day ever. Pickering was also noted in the long-term energy plan as a key element in providing carbon-free energy, low-cost energy, while we're going through the phases of our refurbishment and Bruce Power starts, and then we're starting to get ours back into service. And both plants also, and I can't give you the numbers because I'm not allowed to, but both had excellent ratings from the WANO organization this past year. So this is also good for the company. And the other thing is that, so let's turn to a resiliency just in general about nuclear power, because I think this is something Colleen asked me to talk about. We see resiliency in a lot of ways. There's resiliency, like I mentioned, of workers. In our communities, we are very, on our hydro and our nuclear communities, very big parts of those communities. There's a critical mass of staff who we've seen can respond during natural events. We play a very key role in the social fabric of the communities by contributing to local charities, providing workers for local charities, for even things like little ball clubs and that sort of stuff. We help the backbone of the communities where we work, and it's something that the industry takes and the company takes great pride in. And I think this helps provide a lot of stability. But we also, the two that other come to mind are, one is carbon policy, and I know this is something that the insurance industry is interested in. I'm not sure if it's particular to you, but I want to talk about it anyway, because we see this particularly on the hydroelectric side. On some of our hydro sites, the Kaministiquia River, for example, which is west of Thunder Bay, we've had 200-year storms in about 10 years. This has meant huge amounts of flooding. What it also meant is that we had to activate our emergency centers, but also had to mobilize our staff to go help the community. We provided everything from drinking water, food, and that sort of thing. There weren't a lot of people affected because it's not a big area. But last summer, we also saw, if you have property on Lake Ontario or in Eastern Ontario, huge rainfalls that combined with snowmelt that we had never seen before. So this is climate change is a huge issue to us, and we see nuclear power as being part of that because it provides, we just got off coal. Ontario's energy system is remarkably clean compared to the rest of the world. The experience that we've seen around the world is that people that go off nuclear power tend to see their carbon emissions go up. It's been noted in California and Germany. Ontario last year, for example, if you go on something called Grid Watch, I didn't check this morning, it's probably pretty good. Last year overall, it was, Ontario's system was 40 grams of carbon per kilowatt hour. By comparison, California was about 5 times that. Germany, which is seen as a kind of the leader in energy, clean energy, was about 10 times that. France, and there was somebody from France I mentioned, that France is like Ontario. Very little carbon comes into the system because of nuclear power. We've also seen that Bruce Power and OPG, we have virtually carbon-free power. That's a combination of our hydroelectric and their solely nuclear. Ontario itself is 93% carbon-free. There's about 7% gas that gets thrown onto the system for reliability. But the bulk of it is provided by nuclear power. It's a very stable power source. It also provides a unique platform for further decarbonization of the transportation sector, whether it be through hydrogen trucks, trains, cars, electrification of the transportation network. If you have a really clean system, it provides a great platform for the future. And we've also seen in recent years, you mentioned Hurricane Harvey and Irma. The recent experience in U.S. plants is that our facilities play a great role in stability after natural disasters. In South Florida and in Houston, the reactors there weren't affected in any great way by the hurricanes. They were able to provide a power source that was able to rebuild the grid. And I know Richard may talk about some of their experience in the blackout. But we see that the stable power that we have in Ontario through a reliable integrated system with a lot of different power sources provides a unique platform if we do, God forbid, have a natural disaster, because it provides that resiliency for the community that can get back up quickly, provide that recovery through the employees' base, and just a reliable power system, which is a huge part of any kind of nuclear emergency response, or natural disaster response, I should say. So that's my brief presentation on OPG and our project. Again, I can't say it too often that our project, we're not going to declare victory yet, but we're on target and on time and on budget. It's a good place to be. It's much better than projects I've been on where you're trying to explain, yeah, we're getting there. Give us another chance. Give us another chance. To be able to say proudly that we've done the work that we needed to do to make it happen is a good place to be. It's a good time for the industry, and I think that we are poised for a lot of good things because of the work that we're doing on the nuclear front. So thanks very much.